mean, it couldn't be more appropriate with the workplace environment now all over that, isn't that? Is workplace harassment, how to handle it?
Yeah, probably one of the more common things that I have to deal with these days is workplace harassment. Situation where someone is mistreated at work. These things come to the forefront now. A few years ago, people weren't talking about these things. It's not that there wasn't workplace harassment. People weren't aware that that is a thing. Now that people are talking about it, you can read in the paper, online about these incidents, people understand, well, wait a second, that is not right. And it isn't right. So what we want to talk about in the next few minutes here is what is workplace harassment, what to do if you're a victim of harassment, and how to get yourself out of that bad situation.
All right, we'll start there then. Legally, what is workplace harassment? Give me some examples.
So workplace harassment is actually a broad term and has a broad definition. Workplace harassment is any type of conduct that is unwelcome or reasonably would be considered to be unwelcome. So if you're subject to conduct by someone else in the workplace, a boss, a coworker, whatever it is, that reasonably would be considered unwelcome and inappropriate, that is workplace harassment. Now, it could be many, many things. It could be a boss that talks down to you or uses profanity. It could be someone that makes fun of you in the workplace. It could be being excluded from meetings and not being given the information you need to do a good job. It could be being set up for failure. All this type of behavior that's unwelcome, that if someone were to look at it from the outside and say, that is not right, that type of behavior is inappropriate, is workplace harassment, and it oftentimes results in a poisoned work environment, an environment that makes it difficult to continue working, an environment that's unhealthy. So if you're in that situation, then yeah, you are a victim of workplace harassment.
Talking about workplace harassment, how to handle it, 1-855-821-5900 is a number. This sounds familiar to you, or any other case you want to call Lior on, that'd be just as well. Second point is there an obligation by the employer to stop it before it gets started or while it's underway, and what's the obligation?
Yeah, employers now have proactive obligations to prevent workplace harassment and do whatever they can to prevent that harassment. That may mean having policies in place, and employers have to now have workplace harassment policies that talk about what is appropriate behavior, what is inappropriate behavior, what measures are available to an employee that's a victim of harassment, who do they go to, what the company is going to do to combat harassment. And by having a policy, just having the policy is not enough. Yep. So if you're going to have a policy, you need to make sure that that policy is distributed to employees, that it's communicated, that people know what it means, what is right, what is wrong. Just having a policy and putting it in a drawer and forgetting about it doesn't do anything. So, and beyond that, if an employer is aware that someone is a victim of harassment, even though no one told them, they saw something, they observed, they can't just turn a blind eye. They can't just say, well, no one said anything to me, so I'm going to forget about it. You have to take measures to fix that problem. You have to investigate. Yeah. It's a very serious obligation. Gone are the days where employers can say, boys will be boys, they'll deal with it, it's their problem. It is now the employer's problem.
Well, you mentioned being a victim of it, so if an employee or an individual is a victim of harassment, what's the next step for them?
So the first thing I would tell an employee that's a victim of harassment is, let's see if we can get this problem fixed, because the employer has an obligation to fix it. So let's give the employer that possibility. Let's give him the opportunity to fix that problem. So what do? Well, you go speak to someone. Maybe it's the human resource manager. Maybe it's a boss, an owner, someone in a position of authority, and tell them what happened. By the way, you want to do that in writing. Mm-hmm. So there's a record of what you said and what you did. Give them the opportunity to fix them. Tell them what happened. Tell them as much information as possible, events, dates, who was involved, and let them put the ball in their court to fix it. Legally, what they have to do is to investigate and take measures to repair that problem, but they can't do that if you don't give them the opportunity to do that.
I'm thinking that some of our viewers are thinking, yeah, you know what, I've been in this situation, or I've known guys or ladies in this situation. When you become the squeaky wheel, there can be repercussions. You can get punished for it. You're the workplace pariah. What do you think about that?
Yeah, the reality is the law makes it very clear now, and this is fairly new developments in the law within the last 2 or 3 years or so, that an employee cannot be punished in any way for bringing up harassment allegations. And that is true even if the employer concludes that the harassment didn't happen, even if it concludes that what the employee was experiencing does not rise to the level of harassment. The fact that the employee brought up those harassment obligations means that the employee cannot be punished, penalized, fired in any way for doing that. What does that mean? That means that every employee should feel empowered, should feel that they have the right to bring those allegations up. to have a right to have those allegations considered and investigated without the fear of repercussions. If your employer does, despite what I just said, does punish you, that is a reprisal. That's illegal. In some situations can even be a human rights violation. There's going to be significant consequences to an employer that doesn't do that punishes someone. So bottom line is, yes, you should feel comfortable that you have a right to go and complain about workplace harassment.
We're talking about workplace harassment, what to do about it. You want to reach out any other time, 1-855-821-5900. So an employer is hearing this, or maybe they have an employee come to them and they've been alerted to some harassment. First steps, how do they react to it?
First thing the employer has to do is investigate. Okay, they have to conduct a real thorough investigation of what actually happened. It's not one of those things that just because you complain, we're necessarily going to take your word for it. The employer has to investigate. Sometimes, depending on the situation and how complex it is, they may have to bring in an outside investigator that has expertise in these areas. Beyond that, the employer has to investigate. They have to talk to people. They have to find out what happened. And if they conclude that there was harassment, they have to take measures to fix it. Now, what do they do to fix it? Depends on the situation. It could be training the person that was harassing and making them understand what their obligations are. In some situations, it could be firing that person. Other situation may mean separating the two people that can't work together. But bottom line is, once you investigate and you conclude that something happened, there was conduct that was inconsistent with your workplace policies, you have to do something to fix it. You can't leave it to chance. You can't tell someone else to deal with it. You take measures to fix it. You eradicate the problem right away.
What does the employee do if the employer, number one, doesn't do anything about it when they're alerted about it? Number two, maybe the person you're supposed to report to is the one doing the harassment.
And that is a big situation. Oftentimes I get calls from people saying, I've been a victim of workplace harassment, but it's the owner of the company. Right. So who am I going to complain to? Or HR doesn't do anything. They're afraid of the person that's harassing me. Or I've tried, nothing's happened. So once you've tried to deal with it internally, you've tried to deal with the problem internally and get it fixed, and it doesn't get fixed, you have to deal with it externally. At that point, you have to contact me, and I get involved. That may mean I get you out of there because it's a constructive dismissal. If you're a victim of workplace harassment, that's a breach of the terms of employment, which means you can get out of there with compensation so you don't suffer anymore. Sometimes I could simply give the company a bit of a kick in the pants so that they decide, okay, well, now that Lior is involved, we're going to pay close attention. Now we're going to do something about the harassment. But bottom line is we can deal with that externally. What I don't want anyone to do is ignore the problem. To say, well, I guess there's nothing I can do. I'll just have to continue and suffer. The problem with doing that is you're going to make the problem worse. You're going to probably feel worse. You may end up having to go on a medical leave of absence or a stress leave. I've seen hundreds of cases with people going on stress leave because of workplace harassment that wasn't properly dealt with. Well, deal with it internally. If you can't or nothing's happened once you've tried, let me deal with it. Don't just suffer. Don't hope that it's going to go away. It's not going to go away if you don't do anything about it.